All right. This is the other live stream I've opened. Let me know if you can hear me clearly. That's all that matters now. So let me know if you can hear me clearly. Then I'll continue with the live stream immediately. There's no need to give scripture or whatever, because what I'm about to talk about today is really more to give you all an eye-opener. I've spoken about what the Great Reset is really about in another live stream already, called Societal Resets. If you haven't watched that one, please go and watch it later after this one. This live stream is not going to take that long. So again, let me all know that you're here in the live chat. And look, I've explained before that a societal reset is really that they want to continue the previous system in a low-key way. See it like this. If you've been scamming people for a while and they figure out your scam, what do? You break down your own scam, and while you come up with another scam, and you end up scamming the same people all over again. Now, the type of scam you're using may be a bit different, but it's still a scam. And the type of scam shouldn't be too different, because it's too different, people are not going to get used to it. If people are used to a type of scam and you come with a scam that's completely different, people are not going to fall for it. So you come with a scam that's similar, but that appears different than the previous scam. So the people perceive the new scam as something new or something worthwhile, while it's exactly the same thing in practice that's going on. All right? So when they talk about the Great Reset, about building back better, ask yourself, what are talking about building back better? Okay, if something is broken and you demolish it, you're not building it back, you're building something else in its place. So they talk about building back better. So what they're showing is that the Great Reset is about rebuilding the same old crap again, but they do it in a sneaky way that you don't realize it's the same old thing they're bringing back to you. So for those who are here already, do you understand that part? I'll wait till I get an answer. So when you have a mobile phone, for example, I have a Nokia phone now. And let's say now that I have difficulties with my mobile phone. The apps are not working. Let's say I had several viruses on this mobile phone, and I just can't, because it just doesn't succeed. I don't succeed in making the phone work. There is an option on the mobile phone called the reset option. You go to settings, you click on reset, and there are two types of reset. A reset in which you lose all the content on your mobile phone, and a reset in which you don't lose all your content, but it still goes back to the settings of the factory that made it. So you have the factory settings that are the basis of the mobile phone. When you click reset, you go back to the factory settings. Now, you can go back to factory settings with the content that you had, your apps and your pictures, or you can go to a full reset that your phone becomes completely empty, but you go back to the factory settings. So a reset simply means going back to the factory settings. And the factory settings are the basis of how the thing operates. If I have a Nokia phone which uses Android, I cannot reset it to an iOS operation system of Apple. That's not how it works. I can only reset it back to an Android operating system. If I have a Windows mobile phone that uses Windows as operating system, I can never reset to an Android version. A reset only happens back to the factory settings. We know that. So a reset always goes back to the original plan or the original blueprint. So when you hear about the Great Reset, first of all, forget about the word great. The word great means something is worthwhile. It has quality. Forget about the word great. It's a reset. A reset to what? A reset to the official blueprint of the system. And what's the official blueprint of the system? You, the commoner, stuck in patterns and cycles, unclean spirits feeding off of you, and keeping believers blocked in pagan churches, and to drag most of you to hell with the unclean spirits. That is the plan all along, and that's how what the plan will be till Christ returns. They have no other alternative to the system of exploitation they have now. So what they do is, as I mentioned before, is that when the system is collapsing, they'll begin to fight against their own system through controlled opposition, and the public will think, whoa, there are people rising up against the system, we need to support them. And then when the people join into the beating of the system, they now push in that same system, but with a make-up change to it. So then when the old expression is beaten down and is gone, people have so much joy that the old is gone. Meanwhile, the new is unfolding and people are curious about the new. But the new isn't actually new. The new is actually the same old thing, but with a little bit of makeup. So that is what this so-called reset is about. And the reset should have taken place already, but there's been a lot of delay and a lot of crashes. So to save face, they pretend now as if they always planned it this way. No, they didn't. So a lot of people are saying, oh, there's a great reset coming. Oh, you won't be able to own any land or anything like that. But oh, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. You don't own any land now either, whether you're a farmer or not. Let me explain why. Every country you go to has a capital where the government is seated, and they have a military and a police force that enacts their will on the masses. And in every country is the constitution or the basic documents of that country that decides who has the right to own anything. Okay? And in each of those documents, you're only are entitled to have access to land if you're registered in some specific institution of that country. So the government has a claim over the territory, and you're only allowed to have a plot of land if they say so. If you would go to Brazil now, and there's a rainforest over there with a large plot of grass, and you take possession of this large plot of grass, just like that, and you build your own village there, and you have your family over there, and some people live there, what's going to happen? Sooner or later, the Brazilian military will come and evict everyone, saying that there's no permission from the state authorities for having that plot of land. So if you do have a plot of land, it must be registered and approved of by the pagan courthouses. And when you're about to pass away, you can make up a will, but the will has to be approved by the notarial officer. Many people don't know this, but the notarial officer don't just take your will and verify it. Your will must be in harmony with the politics of the country. If you have 6 plots of land and you want to leave it all to your son, but there's this feminist politics going on in the country, then the notarial officer can tell you, no, sir, you can't leave it all to your son. Or maybe you pass away, nobody tells you, but then your son hears, no, it's not all left to you. Your sister seems to get a little bit also. That's how every country works. A country is an administration of natural resources to dictate who gets what. That's what a country is. A country is an area where an organization called the government decides what happens to the land, happens to the fruit, the vegetables, the rivers, the animals, and which group of human beings benefits and which doesn't. That's what a country is. But we human beings, we attach our whole heart and soul to what we call our country. We perceive our country to be an extension of ourselves, and that's not true. All those flags and those anthems, all of that are just to attach you to what the government wants. So you could, and by the way, you are a vulnerable creature as a human being. Okay, so if there's a large plot of land out there, and you claim it's yours, what if other people come around and say it's not yours? How are we going to make them agree it's yours? Now you can pick up a gun and shoot it at them, but if they come back with more guns, then you're finished. So here's the thing: naturally, you don't own anything on the earth anyway. You only have possessions. So any land you possess is just a convention that people agree upon, and it's the government that backs up your claim. Because if you have a plot of land and people don't want to accept that's your plot of land and they turn on you, then you're finished. But if the government begins to take action against them with violence, then people say, okay, it's your land. So all land ownership on the earth right now, unless it's blessed by the Holy Spirit, it is just an empty claim that's guarded by violence. That's it. And it's the government that manages this violence to protect those empty claims. So you don't actually own anything anyway. So when you hear about the Great Reset, that you won't be able to own any land and anything, you don't own anyone neither now. Those that are so-called millionaires or billionaires and who live in big mansions, they need protection too. They get the protection from the Baphomet cult that they've joined. So it's really the Baphomet cult that owns all those mansions and those big houses and those yachts and those private jets. It's the Baphomet cult ran by the Vatican that owns all of that. It's not them. They are just the sellouts. But you think that they worked very hard, that their business was successful, and because of that, they became rich and wealthy. It's not true. They sold themselves out, and the Baphomet cult granted them some cookies, figuratively speaking, and now they're eating the cookies, and the rest of the masses want part of the cookies. And the masses are told you need to work hard to get some of these cookies, but the cookies are just given by the Baphomet cult, and you only get a cookie if you join that cult. So all those millionaires and billionaires out there, they don't actually own anything. If you are a so-called millionaire, a big farmer with a big plot of land, and you're convicted of a crime, what's going to happen? You end up in prison. Your land may go bankrupt because somebody working on it. What if you're convicted for life in prison for something you didn't do? Then they can just confiscate your land and someone else hands over some money and takes it. So this whole idea that though the Great Reset is coming, nobody's going to be able to own any land or inherit anything. You can't even do it now. Any inheritance out there in the world must be approved by pagan courthouses. Because let's say your grandfather passed away and told you, young boy, here is here's $1,000, and your grandpa before he passed away transferred $1,000 to your account. What's going to happen? A little while after your grandfather passed away, the IRS, if you're in the United States, will come and ask you, how come you get $1,000? You can tell them, my grandpa promised to me before he passed away. But then the IRS will say, okay, but your grandpa passed away now. We can't confirm that. And even if he did, you still need to pay an inheritance tax. And if you don't pay the inheritance tax, they can take the whole $100,000 away from you and put you in prison. So this whole thing of ownership is a myth. It's a myth people cling on to. First of all, naturally, no human being owns anything naturally on the earth. We were born naked, And when we pass away, our bodies will perish. And it's when Christ returns, we will be resurrected in immortal bodies. And the immortal bodies will remain immortal because of Christ's strength. So Christ is the owner of the earth, not us. We are, I would say, we are co-owners in a sense that we will live forever on the earth with Christ when he returns, but we're not the natural owners of the earth. Christ created the earth and he owns it. Period. So any other human being that comes with ownership claims is just empty claims. Period. And those satanic governments know this. They know full well that no human being can come with natural claims. So anytime the government talks about property rights or private property, they're scamming you into a hoax. Because those satanic governments know very well that no human being owns anything naturally on the earth. And those governments know very well that they're illegitimate because they operate based on violence and fear. So when they tell you about private property, first of all, privacy itself does not even exist. I already spoken about it before. In the spirit world, it's just an empty field. So when you believe in this hoax called privacy and this thing called private property, namely you have the right to exclude others from a piece of the earth, and you have a right to use violence to it. When you believe that, you believe in a big hoax. And if the government is laughing at you because you believe in something that your natural sense will tell you is not real. So people that are invested in private property, they get sponsorship from the government to protect this hoax. But here's the thing, it's a hoax. So when the government can come with any excuse to take it away from them. And that's why in the United States, many of the white folks with land have guns. So that when the government comes to take away, they can fight. Why do you need guns to defend something that's naturally yours? Because it is naturally yours. And first of all, the land that many of those white farmers occupy used to be inhabited by Native Americans who were massacred and genocided. So it's stolen land to begin with. And secondly, you don't own anything naturally because God owns the earth, not you. So that's why this whole idol private property is so big in amongst Americans, because they hold on to a claim that they know deep down inside is fake. So, truth being told, this great reset in which they want to um, cancel inheritance rights, are no inheritance rights to begin with. Never has been. People say, but Rashid, they want to get rid of cash money. Listen, cash is the symbol, the tangible symbol that convinces the masses to get along with the system. If they remove that, then people will see through the scam. So they will always need to have some type of cash around. But they want people to use electronic money. And that's been going on already with debit cards, credit cards, with cryptocurrencies. So this whole abolishment of cash permanently, first of all, it's a hoax, because if you do this, you will lose the symbolic grip on the masses. Okay? So people are afraid of, oh, it's going to abolish cash. Well, most of the money used today is non-existent money. And by the way, who knows the difference between currency, credit, and money? There's a difference between currency, credit, and money. Who knows the difference between the two? If you know the difference, tell it briefly in the live chat. I'll wait for 2 minutes. Who knows the difference between currency, money, and credit? Who knows the difference? Let me know in the live chat. I'll wait for 2 minutes. John said currency is the hard money and money just the name of it. Well, currency is the you're correct. Currency is a tool used to exchange goods and services. It can be printed money, it can be coins, or sometimes just goods in general or cattle. But currency is just a tool to exchange goods and services, and money is the value of it in practice. For example, euros, um, euros in Latin America, it's just currency, but not money because you can't use it in practice. American dollars in El Salvador is both currency and money because El Salvador uses US dollars. But US dollars in Europe would be currency, but not money. Okay, that's the difference. And here's the thing, what is credit? Credit is faith of the system in you. Credit is when the bank has trust in you complying with the system. So you have this non-existent currency that they write on your name, and you can use it as if it's real currency. That's what credit is. And most of the money transaction day is just credit. It's non-existent money. And it's credit. Credit is Latin for he believes. Now, who's the he that believes? The beast system. So when you get credit, the beast believes in you. The beast has trust that you won't do the will of the Heavenly Father. So what conspiracy theorists are feeling about the Great Reset is already happening. And let's go to another thing about the so-called Great Reset and want people to live in smart cities. Well, the thing is, urbanization, so clogging people together to live in towns and cities, it has been going on for past 200 years. Okay? And it's because people have been clogged in cities that they've lost access to land and to be economically autonomous. So what the Great Reset, when they talk about smart cities, it's not that they want to come with something completely new. They just want to finish what was already going on, namely to make the masses completely economically dependent on the corporations. Before the 19th century, at the end of the Spanish at the end of the height of the Spanish Empire, you had aristocratic feudalism in which the masses were dependent on landlords, feudal lords. Feudal lords were replaced with mega corporations, and many of those royal noble houses, instead of being feudal lords, they became corporation owners. So those feudal lords became corporation owners, and the masses now lost the little bit of economic autonomy they had and became more dependent on corporations. And in smart cities, they want to complete this by completely making people dependent on the corporations. So, the reset of what? Is the same blueprint that they are continuing with. But you need to think it's something new. And when you think it's something new, you will not realize that it's the same crap that they've been doing before that's continuing. Because this is how the human mind works. When you label something new, people automatically believe it's different. I mean, you call something new, they're going to look for the difference. But if something is not new, but you just call it new, the fact that you call it new and people get used to seeing it as new means that they're going to experience it as if it's new, even though it's not new at all. And here's the thing, in the 19th century, when urbanization was high, there were too many cities that came up. And there were smaller cities in between. So now they want to reduce the amount of smaller cities by merging it all into central cities here and there. And it's whole thing about New World Order. There's nothing new about the New World Order. It's not even new. It's the same aristocratic oppression that they're continuing. It's the same thing. So the whole thing is that they are selling this so-called renewal to the masses. And here's the thing. What they've also been doing is constructing real estate for non-existing citizens. Because one thing you need to understand about those Apollonians that are governing this world behind the scenes is that they know how the human mind works. Perception is what matters when it comes to having a grip on the masses. If you build a whole neighborhood with expensive flat complexes, and you decorate those each of those flats, what's going to happen? Outsiders going to think, "Whoa, this is a very expensive neighborhood. Many people live there." But if you leave but the thing is, nobody lives there. It's just a neighborhood that's constructed to let people think that the country is overpopulated. But nobody really lives there. So what you do is, from time to time, you have actors that go there, open doors, stay, spend the night over there, or celebrities come there, and then for the rest of the time, it's just empty. But commoners will think, "Whoa, that is a very expensive neighborhood," but nobody lives there. It's just a hoax to let you believe in this hard work ethic. And that is what happens in China also. They've constructed cities that are not inhabited, or that's not inhabited as it should be, just to convince the Chinese people that their country is overpopulated. And by doing this, the world thinks China is overpopulated, and because of this, they can lower the wages of the workers, and there's cheap labor in China, and many corporations in the world take advantage of the Chinese population. But in order to take advantage of the Chinese population, they must think that they're overpopulated, and because it's overpopulated, they can keep the wages low. The moment the truth comes out that China doesn't have 1.4 billion people, but far less, the exploitation cannot continue. Because the Chinese people believe that they're overpopulated, they tolerate living as slaves in those cities on this social credit system. And this thing, in the Netherlands also, for those who are still there, for those that are in the Netherlands or those that would visit in the future, you have some of those streets in The Hague and in other places where you see those expensive villas and you think, "Whoa, which rich guy lives over here?" When you notice those houses, there's nobody there. There was this one villa that I passed by a few times during the summer, and it's always looking the same. If people live in a place, they would you would see that the curtains are different. You'd see that maybe there's a ball in the backyard because children are playing, or you may see that there may be some, how would I say, there may be some footprints here and there, or there may be some dirt here and there. When people are occupying a place, you will notice that is occupied. But you're at this villa, this big one, there is no movement, never over there. I knew already that thing is just a hoax building. The building is real, it's built, but it's meant to serve as a hoax to let people think that, oh, there's a very rich individual living there. There's nobody living there. The United Kingdom also has many of those houses, sometimes even neighborhoods. Nobody lives there. It's just to keep the hoax of overpopulation going, just so that the masses comply with whatever scams going on. But here's the thing. If you build all those props that are uninhabited, you need to maintain them. But here's the thing. If you maintain all those props, eventually it becomes unsustainable because human beings are like this. If they've been scammed, they've definitely admitted they're scammed. But when the evidence becomes way too overwhelming, people have to crash. And once they crash, they're going to become upset. If you trick the masses to be stuck in a 9 to 5 in corporations because things are overpopulated, and because things are overpopulated, the rent prices are high, and later figure out that many of those expensive neighborhoods are fake, then they're going to figure out that for generations you've been lying to them, you've been withholding good things from them just to keep them enslaved. They're going to turn on you. So when the masses are about to figure out all that goes on, you cause so much distraction that you will either demolish many of those props, or you will come with some other so-called solution that the people will accept. And that makes me think all those lockdowns would go on. Because there are lockdowns and also curfews, a lot of people don't notice the fakeness of many of those props that are around. So this gives them enough chance to demolish those props as soon as possible, so that when the lockdowns are over and the curfews are gone, people are so traumatized and stressed out by this whole COVID situation that they're going to think it's a whole new world out there, but it's not. So that's what I mean, believers. You need to see through what's going on. So do you understand now how they deceive the masses into something that's so-called new, but really something old? Let me know in the live chat. Lara Parks, you're talking about Armageddon and all of that. That's not what I'm talking about here. There may be some pagan Christian teaching you're holding on to. So just email me about your specific question. Thank you very much. So, look, all of this about the Great Reset or building back better, they're telling you they're building back the same oppression in a much effective way, effective sense to convince you that oppression is gone. And they do this to keep you invested in that same oppression that you need to be delivered from. Look, most people have been love bombed by society. That's why they get along with all society's dictates. Even when they're uncomfortable, they're invested in that discomfort. What should happen is that people lose their investments in that oppression, and then they are delivered from that oppression. So you don't want people to lose their investments. You want them to remain invested so you can drain them. Okay, let me give you the game of how those pagan churches do it. Pagan church, a church of Joel Osteen, Creflo O'Dollar, or I know this guy T.D. Jakes, or any of those mega preachers. Not only mega preachers doing it, but this is how pagan Christianity does it. I'm going to give you the game right now. Let's say you have this guy called Joel. Okay, Joel starts a foundation. Okay, and as a foundation, you're allowed to have commercial activities, and those commercial activities you're allowed to make money, but the money must be used for the foundation. So Joel registers this foundation called itself the Apostle Church of Christ. It's the name of the foundation. He rents a building, and in this building, the services are held. And Joel asks the members to pay tithes and offerings. So let's say now that Joel has 1,000 members, okay? We're adults with jobs. 1,000 members pay in tithes each month. Let's say each member pays $100. So that means that each month he has $100,000 that goes to the business account of that foundation. Now, that money is placed in a deposit. And because Joel is the owner of the foundation and the foundation is registered with commercial activities, he's allowed to use the money of the commercial activities to some extent. He now puts that 100,000 in the deposit. And the bank now allows him to take loans based on the fact that there is a deposit. So $100,000 comes in, and Joe's allowed to take a loan of $1 million. So now Joel has $1 million. And from that $1 million, he now uses half of it to purchase a very big house somewhere, a villa, and the rest he invests in stock in other corporations. So now Joel has this foundation as a security with members, and he has this big house that he lives in, and he has stock in Nike, in Coca-Cola, or whatever. So Joel now gets revenue each month, maybe $80,000 of cash of the revenue of the stocks he has invested in. And his house is paid off already, so there's no mortgage over there. So the 1 million that he took a loan of is tied to the foundation, that's the church. And as long as the church is active, he doesn't have to pay back the loan because there's activity. So now, what's going to happen if the bank or if the money lenders of the bank wants the 1 million back? They will go to the foundation to cash it in. And the foundation is registered at the taxation service in the United States is IRS. If you're somewhere else at some other taxation service, what's going to happen? You are a member of that foundation. You signed your name when you became a member of that church. So as a foundation member, the IRS or whatever taxation service can deduct money from the taxes you've paid to get the money back. So Joel has a free ride at your expense financially. He lives in his villa with a nice car, doesn't have to pay rent and all of that. And when the costs come on the foundation. And the foundation members carry the financial liability. So it's a con game in which he gets free money and he can live off of it. And he makes sure that he has investments in other corporations, so he has a revenue. So even if that whole church foundation would crash, he still has $80,000 a month to investments in other corporations. And that's how pagan church works. Let me say like this. It's not people say it's a pyramid scheme. It's like a Ponzi scheme. Who's heard of a Ponzi scheme before? Let me know in the live chat. Who's heard of a Ponzi scheme before? So, a Ponzi scheme is simple. Let's say Chuba now gives $500 to Frank with the promise that within a year, it's going to be 10% increase. So Frank can expect $550, so $50 profit. But here's the thing. Frank doesn't have the extra $50 to give with the $500 he received. So Frank goes to 10 other people to get $500. So at the end of the year, he gives Chuba $550 as promised, but it's money taken from those other people. And then it goes again into another investment, take money from other people to pay off those other folks. And that's how it goes around and around and around. And it works perfectly fine till one day there are too many investors with too many expectations and it crashes. Well, Pagan church is a Ponzi scheme in which the members don't realize it's a Ponzi scheme because the members are told your reward is in heaven. Any Ponzi scheme out there, the financial investor wants their profit within a year or 5. If you don't get it within a year or 5, they will report you and you will go to prison. But in Pagan church, you have an investment that happens, but you're told it's after you pass away that you'll get it in heaven. There's a thing. It's not even biblical that you will go to heaven. No human being will be resurrected in immortal bodies and will dwell on the earth with Christ. But they tell you it's in heaven you'll get the reward. So because you were told that you'll get the reward in heaven, they now, when you sue them in a court of law, they can tell the pagan pastor can tell the judge, Your Honor, I told them the reward will be in heaven. That's what I preach every Sunday. So if they invest and expect it now, they go against my teaching. And then, even though it's a Ponzi scheme, the judge would tell the one that sued the pagan pastor, but he told you it's in heaven. Okay? So it's similar indeed to a pyramid scheme. But this thing with a pyramid scheme, you actually have to keep recruiting, and pagan churches do recruit people. But in a Ponzi scheme, a Ponzi scheme crashes eventually anyway. But pagan church is a Ponzi scheme in which you are told not to expect any return. And because you don't expect any return, you keep on giving, and they keep on receiving, and others keep on benefiting, and your whole life passes away, and you're left with nothing. That is how those mega churches have those pastors who drive Bentleys, Mercedeses, Bugattis. They have their own private jets and all of it. Why? Because they manage to freeload on the public. And they do it in the name of Christ. Shuba, thank you very much for your super chat donation. It will be used for this ministry. So, what's going on now in pagan church has been going on in the Middle Ages under the Roman Catholic Church, in which they told people, if you want to go to heaven, you need to pay money to go to heaven, to get your sins washed away. And eventually, Protestants came up and realized it's nonsense, but the same scam has been going on, but now in this whole charismatic movement. And here's the thing. Pagan churches do the same thing the corporate world is doing. It's the same thing. But in the corporate world, if people keep on investing and within 5 years or less, they don't get any return, you're in trouble. If you have Microsoft asking you to purchase, to invest in their stocks, and you never get the return back financially, nor in assets, you could sue Microsoft, and Microsoft, no matter there's a big pagan corporation, they'll be in trouble. Okay, so that's why in the world, to protect themselves, those pagan corporations invest in one another. So if you invest in stocks in Microsoft, then Microsoft loans out some of the stock to Pepsi, Pepsi loans out to McDonald's. So they're all covering one another, so that when you don't get enough return, you will always be stuck in a loophole, seeing who's to blame. Because each corporation is invested in one another. So who are you going to address when you don't get enough revenue? You can't. It's going to be like a mind maze for you. So that is what the corporate world is doing. But in the corporate world, this game can go on till people realize, hold on a minute. All you corporations are investing one another, pretending to be rivals and competitors, so that people that invest in your products can't expect a return, because then you're stuck in this maze of finding out who's the one that owns it. And pagan church does the exact same thing, but because they come in the name of Christ as wolves in sheep's clothing and keep pointing to heaven, you're diverted from ever expecting anything back. So what's going on in Pagan church with this Ponzi scheme? And there's the same thing that goes on in the corporate world, and that's a reshape of what's going on with the aristocratic feudal lords of the Middle Ages and early colonial era. And that goes all the way back to Rome and the Greek Empire. So there's nothing new under the sun. The languages are new. The people that live now never lived before. The countries are new, but it's the same game. And here's the thing. What those pagan corporations are doing, believers could easily bypass this. Let me explain how a common economy works. Okay? Once you understand how a common economy works, you can bypass as a group this whole corporate exploitation. So are you ready? Do you have pen and paper with you? Just a few notes I'm giving you, but I'm just giving you the game how a common human economy should work. How you have a common, stable, local human economy. Are you ready? So, number one is you make sure you have a small group of people that's serious. Write down number one, make sure you have a small group of people that's serious. Don't invite the crowd and the masses, just a few people that's serious about this. If you can't find those, then just stop. A few people that are serious. Second is, each of the serious people has a project. Third, sponsor each other's projects. Fourth, make sure the projects circulate one another. Those are the four notes. Once you've written them down, I'm going to give an example of how it works in practice. A simple example. So once you finish writing it all down, let me know in the live chat and I'll continue with the example for you. So one, you find people that are serious. Second, each individual must have their own project. Third, you sponsor each other's project. Fourth, the project must circulate each other. Let me know in the live chat when you've written it all down. Yes. I didn't mention that because it should be obvious for believers, but thank you for mentioning it, Shuba. Power it with the comfort of the Holy Spirit to keep creeps out, indeed. But we do that anyway because we walk by faith. Because I'm addressing believers here. Unbelievers shouldn't even be on this live stream. So can I begin with the example? I'll just wait till you guys are so far. Okay. Let's say now you have James. James is married. He has a few children. You have James and you have 10 other Englishmen. Okay? And they live in the south of England. Now, they all are farmers. There's this large area where they used to live for generations. So, James and those other 10 men come together and they decide, you know what? If this continues like this, we will all go broke. We'll all end up homeless, all of that. So what are we going to do? We all have plots of land. Okay, so let's do it like this. You, Kevin, you're good with swine. So make sure you produce a lot of swine. You, Mark, you're good with horses, so breed many horses. You, Marco, you're good with the vine. So make sure you plant several vines. Me, I'll plant many weeds for the grain. So everyone makes sure they work and produce something. And each one of them lays down 10 pounds. Okay? So they lay 10 pounds in a deposit. So then you have 100 pounds. Okay? So let's say the harvest comes. They need to pay people to bring in the harvest. So from the deposit, they from 100 pounds, back then it was 100 pounds of silver. So there was were many coins. 1 pound sterling in the from the 18th century for today is around let's say 60 euros or something like that. But anyway, so they have 100 pounds, and they now take away 20 pounds to pay off the reapers. They reap all the harvest. Then it pay another 10 pounds to transport it for it to be sold. So now they're left with 70 pounds. And from the 70 pounds, half they use 35 pounds to reinvest in sowing for the next season. So 35 pounds is left, and that's there. So because they have sold all their crops, they now have income. Let's say now they have 35 pounds left, and in income, they get 200 pounds. Now they put 200 pounds in the deposit. But now this time, they will use 135 pounds, and they will go to a bank to use that as security. And they will loan 2,000 pounds. And now they begin to invest more in their business. And that's how their reach grows and grows and grows. And after 3 generations, you have a small town of I won't say millionaires because we know the millionaire thing is a hoax, but you have a small town of wealthy families. You can call them millionaires if you want, but you have a ton of wealthy families that remain wealthy no matter what economic crisis comes. Why? Because the money that's there goes to a deposit, a collective deposit, and they circulate it. So, because they establish a circulating transaction amongst each other, the wealth remains amongst them, and they can use that now as a force to increase. That's how every economy works. Every economy is a circular movement of goods and services, a circular movement of goods and services. And you can, once you have a circular movement of goods and services, you can now power it, whether it's with the paranormal or with the powerful spirits, and now it will increase. And the increase will manifest in more physical and financial abundance. That's how you do it. Very simple. Pagan church will never tell you this. No, because pagan church is draining you on behalf of the beast. But I just told you how it goes. So believers worldwide can practice this and develop local strong economies. And eventually, we as believers can trade with one another when we all have local economies are strong here and there. And then we don't even have to bother about the beast system and its nonsense anymore. This is what the apostles did after Christ was resurrected. After Christ was resurrected, this is what the apostles did. Okay? And the apostles were so powerful in it, the apostles passed away because they had mortal bodies. But the believers that became born again later on, they continued with it, and before you know it, believers took over the whole world's economy, and Satan's grip on mankind was doomed. It was then that Roman emperor Constantine pretended to be Christian, pretended to be a believer, and he established the Catholic system to get a grip on the believers. You get it? So believers made the beast system irrelevant, and the beast system was collapsing as a result. However, it's through trickery that believers were tricked into sponsoring the beast system, and that's how it's been going on till this day. And that's how it will be till Christ returns. So what we as believers need to do now is to do just as the apostles did in the first century. We know how it worked out. They were so successful, they shut down the satanic powers that had the grip on mankind. Today, the satanic powers can only continue with the consent of believers. By tricking believers into thinking that the satanic powers have a right to be there, we believers tend to tolerate them or even validate them. That needs to stop. We must replace this Apollonian, Greek white supremacist, sodomite nonsense with actual beneficial economies. We have to do this. And I'm confident we will do it also. Throughout history, believers have been under attack, but we continued. The same we must do now. So, unlearn any legitimacy that Satan does not have and begin to establish long-term economies that will survive your lifetime for other believers. Once we actually begin to do this again, because we used to do it, once we do it again, instead of relying on pagan church, we'll be far better off, because now many believers who are about to wake up are trapped in those charismatic churches where they think if I pay enough tithes and offerings, I'll be like just like a pagan pastor with his own private jet and all of that. No, we should construct circular movement of goods and services among each other, powered with the power of the Holy Spirit, and that's how it will grow, and that's how it will replace and shut down the beast system. That is what we're called to do. And that is what believers will do in the end times. And it will be so successful that the beast system will retaliate with all its strength, and the beast system will fail so badly that those that are left in the world that don't want to serve Christ will turn full reprobate and begin to literally kill one another and destroy the earth. And instead that Christ will return. Now, many believers are still waking up. The tribe of Judah still is recovering. Once the tribe of Judah is recovered and takes the lead, believers from all over the world will join them, and this will work out. And here's the thing. Are you powering your economic activities with decrees and declarations? Are you doing that? Because one thing you need to understand about those pagan corporations, that they power their projects with blood sacrifice. They power their projects with negativity that comes forth from the stress. You going to that job every day, going stressed at home and tired, that's tribute that you give to the demons. Okay, so all those millions of people that go to have a 9 to 5, they all are stressed out and tired. All this anger, all this bitterness, all this frustration is the fuel for evil spirits that comes up, and now that powers that fiction of those pagan corporations. So we are the ones powering their fiction, and their fiction oppresses us. So we are powering our own oppression. That is what goes on. So while you still have a 9 to 5 till you don't need it anymore, why don't you begin to power your own economic activities with decrees and declarations? Because you have the Holy Spirit. So you have the Holy Spirit, the real power, begin to enforce, begin to decree and declare that people develop a thirst for your products. If you're selling something, I don't care whether it's just some t-shirts or whatever, decree and declare that the masses develop a thirst for your products. Enforce it. And before you know it, people suddenly begin to purchase your stuff and you don't know why they're purchasing it. But Rashid, that's violating their free will. Free will does not exist. Every human will is shaped by the environment. And we're called to baptize the nations. So we're the ones called to shape the people on the earth to be Christ-centered. And those human beings that revolt against us, they will harm themselves and turn reprobates in the process. This whole BS of pagan Christianity about free will, unlearn it. Because you're not doing that. decreeing and declaring a thirst for your products, your economy in the masses. But those pagan corporations, they trick you into allowing yourself to be drained, and they're using uh, the the pollution that comes out of you to power that fiction that oppresses you. So pagan corporations come with fiction, with a fiction. You end up powering it because you think you have no other choice, and now that fiction traps you, and they're the ones freeloading on you. And they do satanic rituals. They do blood sacrifices, and they drain you, cause stress in you and in your life to fuel their fiction because they need negative energy for it to work, and they get negative energy from you. They turn you into a battery to fuel their fiction. So why can't believers come up with their own fiction and use the Holy Spirit inside of us to power it and to trick and make the masses um, turn around in our favor? Decree and declare that there's a thirst for your services and products amongst the masses. Do it. Whether it's a small pizzeria you have, or you're selling t-shirts, or you're selling books, whatever it is, decree and declare, power what you're doing. Stop seeking validation from others for what you're doing. Power it. Look, that is something I had to grow into myself. So I'm not looking down on anyone, okay, for not getting this. I had to learn this also. Okay? Pagans do this, but they need negative energy for it to work. So they need to trick the masses. We don't have to trick the masses. We have the Holy Spirit. So we have no excuse for not doing this. And here's the thing: you don't lack knowledge anymore. You know now what to do. Power what you're doing. Then believers power one another, and that's how we will develop our own economies, and eventually the beast system will crash. Because it's you thinking that you're nothing and you're capable of nothing that keeps the beast system going. And many people out there are beast worshippers. They worship the beast, so they will not give up being whorish slaves to the beast system. Let them be. If they don't see any value in what you're doing, they don't have to see value because they don't even want to see value. Okay? Let them be. Continue in your walk by faith. All right? So, that's it for now. Do not fear the great reset nor any of those scams. Keep walking by faith, and I'll see our economies develop. Be at peace.